for now, just be Lisbeth.
Who's what side?
I'm not.
So Abby's gonna get the notification when the food comes, right? Good morning. I get
Evan Sigalow 61.
Hmm?
Oh yeah, wait. I have the. Do you have the same stock email?
What?
Do you have?
Yeah. Do you want Grizzle dogs?
Oh,
Or
that's
what?
fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is your Wi-Fi not working?
How does your email start today?
LD.
Oh yeah, LD email channel. And Wes, what do y'all want?
Yeah. You can't blow it up. You can.
Can someone hit the start run button so that we know that this is ready?
Yeah, none of us can get the internet to work, but we will as soon as we can. We'll do it on our phones.
I mean,
But
I
everyone's
can't
here.
say it's not
I got you. So within the next couple of minutes, please.
Okay. We're pretty much good to go.
Do I need to pull up Brentwood
Yeah.
2013
You
logs?
kind of do.
Grenade,
You have them.
Yep.
Oh my god.
I mean, when you're running an argument, you gotta have logs.
That was like
Y'all read Speed Bad?
Yeah, that's a Brentwood Jared Paul special.
2013 and 2014, like all Brentwood schools.
It was great.
It was like hard to watch.
It happened against one of my debaters, but he just like knew of a debate video online of this dude spreading incomprehensible, like he was just so unfair. He just
Could I
pulled
use
up
your
and
share?
played it during process.
You're all put up.
It was all across it. It was just him just pointing at this video and the other debater being like, no, like, that doesn't mean I've changed. Like,
I've changed, please.
Wait, I just ordered that.
okay. Wait, this is okay. No, I'm pretty
Oh, well, now I'm gonna
Dude, when you're in debate, you just like got this thing with pens where you just touch it.
I
Just like
spin my
appropriate.
Okay, I'm going to- My
But
internet
also,
is full. I'm gonna go get a
I still
hotspot.
have that open it. So if someone just like, gives me a lemonade pen, just like no chance I get that. Never
It's
know.
like, I'll drop it 100.
Dropping pen.
Phone to find this.
There we go. Into the except DLCs.
My favorite extent part has to be where you can ask questions. Like those rounds are easily the best.
I was in this, do you know Jason Warren? He's like, well, oh, I guess he's like, his first dad, and I'm sitting there flipping my pen, and then, he's like, because I'm dropping, like, I'm a freshman, I'm dropping every and I just like can't stop, and I do it a few more times, he like puts it on my ballot.
Yeah.
And then, I do it
Ron said he wouldn't get-
and he emails my coach, Eric Mears, and it's like,
Whatever. Literally whatever.
flipping his
At least one would make it.
and dropping it during everyone else's speech. When he's making stop.
That's such a funny game.
Dude, I think I might go see Infinity War.
Why?
Have you even seen it?
I really haven't seen everything.
I just don't think you're worth it. They're all the same.
I love it. It was so good. I watched it, like it's on all the planes now, so I watched it like 6 times.
The first 15 minutes are like pretty.
My
But
job
like the rest of the movie
I
is.
can't tell if it's a
I haven't seen Black Panther.
No, I'm just saying.
I want to see when I get back. I'm just immediately gonna watch Black
What?
Panther and Infinity War back to back. Everyone's had it.
Wait, did Greed leave? But I'm using his.
Wait, he wanted to judge another game.
Yeah, that would make sense.
I'm calling my friend who has a hotspot and this is making me very sad.
mean, anyone got a USB or something?
Yeah, does anyone have a flash drive?
I think so.
First person to get out their flash drive?
Extra space.
I got it.
You just threw it at Bennett.
It's on. I was
Here it is.
hoping you would catch it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm Bennett's back.
I also
Three
found that
and-
Wait,
I
where
don't
did
want to know who that was.
Did-
Well,
Did it just hit the back of your head?
you just hit. I put my head down.
I was
And then
hoping
threw it
Martin
right
would
in my
catch it.
No.
And then
It was- it was-
You
it was-
thought
it
I
was-
was like,
it was-
yeah,
it was
hit me.
trajectory. It's okay. There's reason we do this.
Spoilers are not cool, bro. Well, then watch the movie.
If someone spoils anything about any of these movies,
You will be upset.
I'll actually kick you out if you spoil it.
This is what judge kick means.
Yeah, the true meaning of judge kick.
When I see versus Sean. With like speech time.
Ant-Man doesn't make sense because he has the same force as like if he was real size, but like he's able to like jump on you. But like if he really
you're right.
weighs
There
like
is no
104 pounds like an average man, like having him jump on you, you definitely wouldn't be able to like hold him in your palm and be like, ugh.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
I is ready.
Alright, do you guys fine with just calling for dogs after if you need it?
I mean, if it's good for us to be on the email chain, but we obviously won't be able to look at it during speeches, which is fine.
Yeah.
But if we're on the chain, like if
He has
we're
an email. He has an email
USB.
at all as a USB.
Since just
Oh,
Wi-Fi's not.
oh, you're right. Yeah, then in that case, after the debate,
We'll just pass it.
we'll get it.
Sure,
We'll
sounds
get it.
good.
We'll get it.
All good?
Mhm.
Plea bargain sustained mass incarceration through a prioritization of efficiency that strips black and brown communities of legal protection in pursuit of profit and control. Wheel 12. The burden of guilt is more theory than fact, where 90% of charges result through plea bargain based on the presumption of guilt. Twisting people called learning to plea bargain mean the government did not have to shoulder its burden of proving guilt. The system is legal extortion, prosecutor, coercive, and by pile on charge after charge, judges pay punishment poverty who lead this results in innocent entry guilt. This is not uncommon to allow clients to take a full plea bargain to allow prosecutor to bring charges against far more than the system could process their trial plea. Bargain law 10 times more case of plea bargain has become an essential element of prison growth and racially disparate prison population with the burden falling on blacks and Latinos. Without plea bargain, the explosion of prison populations, especially for profit, can never be possible. Plea bargain does not make society safe. This is funneled to rationalize the commodification of people for profit that serves the interests of the prison industrial complex, politicians, bondmen, for-profit prisons, police, and correction. And best and most recent statistics prove that plea bargain is unquestionably discriminatory, controls black incarceration, criminalization per day of 17. White defendants are 45% more likely to see their top charge reduced charge reduction may limit the possibility of conviction. White defendants are 74% more likely to see home misdemeanor charges carrying potential imprisonment drop. This creates lower evidentiary standard for high rates of on-call conviction. These cases of black individuals begin to be labeled as criminal. White defense felony charges dropped or amended into misdemeanor charge 14% more often. And mass incarceration is a violent mechanism of racist social control. Prison expansion maintains racial hierarchies, prevents black self-determination. Alexander 6. Mass incarceration is by racial segregation, political disenfranchisement, and social stigmatization of underoppressed people of color. African American men compress half the prison population. 1 out of 3 is in prison. The racial hierarchy remains attacked by denying blacks and equal education, barring them from and relegating them to the 13 Democrats. An exception for forced labor, film disenfranchised, law tilted the scale and fear for the white electorate, feeling and for black men permanently disenfranchised. Mass incarceration results in fewer legislatively thrown as representing people of color behind bars. The Gene's new system is it successfully blames the victim of this system is supposed to lost. Plan text. Supreme Court of the United States in the next available test case sought to rule plea bargaining unconstitutional on the basis that it creates a substantially disparate racial impact. Crushing the system grinds it to a halt. The misdemeanor pipeline would be forced to change. Roberts 13. Millions of misdemeanors end up in the lower criminal courts. Misdemeanor processing saddles individuals arresting criminal records for minor offense conviction or reject quick, easy, guilty pleas, refusing to process individual quickly. About some of the cost of mass misdemeanor processing, the defense counsel litigated the system would grind to a halt. Would place a burden of mass misdemeanor processing on the courts as well. Prosecution legislator act to reduce the cost of misdemeanor policing. Prosecutors would exercise this discretion. The plan creates this crisis within the CGS that forces reform for communities of color. Hunter 16. For society to confirm racial justice, the assertion would overwhelm the regime and force the government to desist from prosecuting hundreds of thousands, 750,000 people plead guilty each year. This would necessitate a seismic shift from police, and the mass assertion would raise widespread doubts of legitimacy, a statute potentiality, force reform, and direction of decriminalization. Assertion would expose the moral legitimacy of mass incarceration by continuing potential procedural and timely regressing the wheels of carceral machine. Reinvigorating the progressive disparate impact doctrine is key to resolving systemic inequalities. Coming in aisle 17. Robust enforcement via disparate impact are crucial to avert political, social, and economic repercussion from the status quo for the nation to truly eliminate discrimination. Courts would you well consider the disproportionate disadvantage of proof of claim given subtle discrimination. The disparate treatment theory is not even come close to eliminating discrimination. Defendants explain away practiced by legend that there was no intent of progressive application yielded highly positive results until the 80s, and then this represents an increase substantially implicit by self-regarding promises. The Supreme Court acknowledged that the need to remedy unconscious discrimination and the continue emphasizing disparate impact. These important developments signal the return of a progressive application of the disparate impact doctrine. No reinvestment in incarceration or retaliation. 116. This seems unlikely budget has not been hurting portions of budget corrections have exponentially swelled the electorate's appetite for bank ruling is waning and expansion will be logistically front up when an army of judges with internal power, special election investment, and mass incarceration depleting valuable social resources while producing disproportionately little social benefit in the short term. Skip the next card. The future is unpredictable. The best way to preserve future value is to do good things now. Karnowski 14. I reject that value. At least high value on the far future makes it clear that one should focus on reducing catastrophe. One has a good reason to focus on tangible opportunity. Good. The argument relies on specific prediction backed by speculation. Minimize accidental risk would include any contribution. General human empowerment. One could reconcile care about the great effect about the far future by donating charity track. Regular story control opportunity who good is are better than high uncertainty arguments about the far future. Developments that facilitated strong growth have been driven by the former. Not many in which the latter has yielded great benefits. Short-term considerations have done good in ways that we wouldn't have been able to foresee. Rather than unrobust estimates, attempts to reduce catastrophic risk must be weighed against tangible good, and which has more potential to shape the far future. You can predict black swan events. Shadow 17. Predictability ultimately hinges on conflict. Black swan or changing game-changing events, but social probability cannot be predicted. Attempt to predict would be a fool's game. Their lecture constantly evolving. Even in a given conflict dynamic can drastically change. Changes or black swans themselves. Our ability to forecast may be limited to short-term. Too many confident shocks. Prediction become feudal. Prediction affect their behavior today and invalidate the original prediction. Accuracy not always respond in the same way else become predictable. The small event may lead to cascading effect. Had the same structure could have accommodated an alternate equilibrium. We are unable to know which card will ignite the keg. Skip the next card. First is that 1AR theories drop the debater with a 1AR is too short to rectify abuse and have a shunt in substance. Second, no neg RPI, otherwise the segment into an arc can collapse so short shut and get with infinite 1NC abuse via sheer brute force and times on theory. Third, fairness is a voter's constituent competitive activity based on skills when losses unfair. Likely to skew a judge's ability to determine the better debater. Insofar as fairness is not relevant, you can't decide who won the round and you should vote affirmative even if they're winning it because that's unfair. Fourth is structural abuse, always substantive abuse. It's only quantifiable, non-arbitrary measure abuse. You can't determine how much ground loss is abusive while they have more access to the ballot is yes, no question. It's also flexibility prior inability to access a path of battle prevents me from structurally from proven abuse and having access to the layer. Fifth, education, not a voter. 8 point, it's objective. We all value different types of intervention inevitable. B point itself, defeating education means to read theory against people for being uneducational, never actually learn from those arguments. C point, content doesn't matter. Reading the book and getting to lose statute solves. There's no reason debate is key to education. D is that education bastardized in debate. Anyways, most of the time people don't actually read books and articles and don't even remember the core topic just heads on to old topics.
So no neg fiat.
Yes. You get all the next fiat. As long as that fiat's fair.
I was just asking if he didn't agree with it. Alright. Guess someone feels strongly about neg fiat. Are you ready for context?
Yes.
What sort of predictions are inaccurate?
Are you asking in context of the Shadowfo evidence?
Sure.
Sure, Shadowfo's about like things like IR, things like terrorism and global war that rely on a set of global actors with contradictory interests that rely on a long linear chain of predictions. For example, things like predicting that one single event will spark a global war is impossible to do.
Like
it's not so much a cascade argument as much.
The F's advantage proper, your Heiner evidence indicates that you make sustaining the prison industrial complex extremely expensive. Is there an argument that says that making it expensive causes like less prison industrial complex?
What do you mean? Yeah, that's a Roberts evidence as well as Heiner.
Can you point me a line from those evidence that says that if it is expensive, they will stop doing it?
What do you mean?
The
arguments for why it's expensive is the Heiner evidence, which says that it won't lead to like a reinvestment in massive incarceration.
Yeah, no. All this card says that you would like increase the caseload like 30 times, right?
Wait, which card are you talking about? Because there are two Heiner cards in that.
Heiner. Oh, I'm uncertain. But I just know what the Heiner article says.
Are you talking about the creates a crisis that forces mass reforms?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's better answered by the Roberts evidence, which is the card above it. It's that the system would grind to a halt. It would place the burden of mass misdemeanor processing on courts and prosecution. Legislators might act to reduce the cost of misdemeanor policing. Prosecutors would exercise discretion.
Okay, your Heiner evidence about reinvestment indicates that some states have already it's already been very expensive in some states to sustain the prison industrial complex. Have those states also pulled back?
I mean, some states certainly have with like legalization of things like marijuana.
Okay, where's the evidence that says that that was done because it was like expensive to keep the
Don't
prison
have
industrial
evidence that
complex?
says that. Your question
Okay.
was have they.
Alright, particular on the Robbins evidence, the line you cited, it just says the system would grind to a halt. The line above it says if defense counsel,
Yes, like
litigated.
the cards about if like defense counsel took it to trial. The argument is if plea bargaining were no longer there, it's for efficiency.
Okay, how many trials do you result in?
What do you mean? I don't have an exact number, so.
Okay, the second piece of Hunter evidence that says expansion would be logistically fraught because it entail like appointing lots of judges, special
Yeah.
elections, etc. Why would states and the government not do those things?
Sure, there's no public support for that. Their budgets are currently shrinking in the status quo, so they literally do not have resources to do the same amount of things.
Do not
Other
have the money
arguments
to
are
do so.
things like they need to get past a filibuster, etc.
Okay, the theory underview at the bottom on the sort of structural abuse stuff. What is
Yep.
structural abuse?
Arguments that give you more routes of ballot.
Is like reading a T-shell structural abuse, if I can run a T
No.
or a D. Okay, then if it is, how is that not a separate route to the ballot of the applicant?
Because I have access to things like fairness too.
Okay, but what is like conditionality structural abuse?
Probably,
Why?
because it gives you multiple routes of ballot. You get 2 worlds while I only get 1.
Okay. I will put this on the flash drive. The order is 2, then the theory underview.
Oh, your phone's right there.
Okay. Then the theory underview, the predictions thingy, and then it will be the advantage hopper.
Oh, you're doing flash, okay. Yeah.
No, I was waiting for it to like
Oh.
go because it was unloading. Okay. It is.
I'm not ready yet.
Okay.
Opening.
Yeah.
What's it called?
TOC quarters 1 and C. Alright, good?
2 seconds. I'm sorry, 2 case.
Yeah, 2 case. Theory, predictions, advantage.
Okay, thanks.
Everybody else good? Capital 1, the Supreme Court of the United States index available test case such rule that all plea bargains except for United States Department of Justice Antitrust Division plea agreements are unconstitutional on the basis they cause a substantially disparate racial impact. Its dispositional, I can kick it if they put defense on it. Please, are key to the Antitrust Division success. Checks corporate corruption, the global cartel bonds, Reinhardt, and all the 5 corporate enterprises with the illegal plea negotiated about CPs that use of police not paramount of importance to antitrust statistics and furthering policy objectives that the police defendants would be less likely to negotiate antitrust cases and result in plea agreements. International cartel cases are probably important to anything we do in the Antitrust Division. They're important because conspiracies involving companies don't have it. The United States problem is that 90% of the penalty defense not accessible to jurisdiction. We have to play very different enforcement. Give the defendant doesn't have a confidence in the United States ability to actually secure the crime purposes. They will not come forward with the Antitrust Division exclude the most culpable consecutive corporate plea agreements. No disparate impact in these cases. OECD aid literature has criticized plea bargaining criminal cases. These cases are less relevant to cartel cases. Defendants represented by sophisticated counsel. They can make informed purchase settlement procedures. Plea agreements are a logical extension of practice already widely skipped. Exploitation and violence. Grillo 1214. This year's been the most violent year. More than 20,800 murders in the first 10 months. Small groups are audited by hitmen who are very violent. The cycle of violence continues. Cartels will diversify their portfolio and involved with human smuggling, kidnapping, molesting, piracy, prostitution, extorting avocados, and cartels in Mexico are working with external terrorist circuits. Existing checks and mix attacks like Rosenthal 13. There is proof that Hezbollah function with cartels like Zetas, Hezbollah's trading bases and sleeper cells in Mexico's channels are perfect for the transportation of illegal bioweapons to conflict the United States. Attacking U.S. installations as possible. Hezbollah and Zetas and money laundering operation that the power to go exercise to the local government the possible destruction become a reality. They were coupled with Hezbollah and Mexico present the U.S. with a major threat to its borders. If power terror is possible and existential risk one Hempel 17 purchase of critical worth that the biological weapon is high. Today, purchase is more likely to biological attacks will be able to malicious and process and have the right supplies, all which are available in nuclear activities much more closely monitored than the biological risk to be difficult to regulate activities of these groups of bioweapons. Always the case, one extinction always on reversibility kills all life forever and precludes any future sanctions only racism to probability. Every attack stopped is a solid risk of the impact, and experts conclude the threat is high taking into account old evidence. Picks or repeat a real world education. Branson 7. Knowledge, gender benefits for cursory and also I could write off arguments, but a lot of the empirical factual basis of missing every technical issues, understanding the conflicts will obviously this really determines whether policies turn for the basic details pretty much get left down to basic depending on non-proliferation world muscle produce on deciding which much facilities to allocate money to knowing specific people individual division debates for every live in the way meaningful engagement possible classes, how to make it doing more like technical policy where derivative takes are a vital topic which I can best converse is the design of emissions trading games because the literature was even near the prevalence of from downside auction time to focus near the debates and for real net the people session with fairness is what's got one of the style things adapting to the unfair circumstances and run conditional CPs get better you gotta react to with situations a lot of the intellectually integrating parts of the debate where partisan most unfair. Next off, conservatives lack justification for an unprecedented judgeship bill, but there isn't because there isn't a caseload crisis, but the one caused by the act will be used as an excuse to push their agenda. Greenhouse 1123. There's been a push to fill dozens of vacancy purposes to triple judgeships. That tells us Republicans are desperate to gain control of the courts. The memo consists of lengthy discourse by caseload crisis, new judgment could be justified press volume, new judgment bill, change the balance of power. Sorry, promise no workable process. Crisis has been flat. That's not like to make the head away. That magnifies every impact in terms of case social, environmental, and judicial progress determined by Trump's ability to pack the courts. Largely 1123 Trump's bill helps reshape America with 50% out of 53 why it would be white male passing judgment on Americans to clog the hell excessive input on civil rights, environmental, criminal justice, gold standard for the as soon as we know it, courtship laws, people, right, and democracy. Skip the next part of the case. Overview to the theory interview. One is reasonability. Persuasive defense on theory means you ignore theory requires abandoning substance set a norm, which means the net benefit of that norm must outweigh voting on theory instead of substance. 2. When our theory is skewed to the F. 8.02 norms overcover substance and cover substance and overcover theory since they get the collapse and persuasive advantage of 3 minute 2 error. 2. B point the responses to my counter will be new, which means when our theory necessitates intervention. 8 point implications. 8 point dropping the argument minimizes the chance the round is decided unfairly. B point if intervention happened on theory debates and judge to intervene in a way that decreases the asinine nature of LD theory. The line by line. You say drop the debate because the time skew. There's no time skew. It's your choice to invest in theory so for so long the 1 year anyway. Theory usually takes about 10 seconds to read. The second argument is that there's 13 minutes between test skews on the argument. You say, no, RPI, get an RPI if you read more than one theory argument, that's key because otherwise then the affirmative can just read like 3 shells of the 1 hour, which makes the turn impossible because the turn has to cover all of them and the tour gets new responses to the counter interpretation. They say fairness of voter. That's a question of structural fairness. I made the round difficult for you is not the same thing as structural unfairness, which means a pick is good because it narrows because if it narrows the affirmative, then it proves that the negative has a right to that strategy and the affirmative should just get redder and respond, which is a sort of turn to those specific terms of fairness. You say structural abuse that way, but that's a question of what structural abuse is, i.e. if I read a nib, it's probably bad, but if I read a counterplan that could be kicked, that is not the same thing as structural abuse because you still have the world of the affirmative which you can weigh against everything, but nib is a separate layer that you just like cannot weigh on there. Education's out of it argument, you say subjective, everything is subjective. The judges are all subjective because they evaluate arguments. It's not a question of how subjective education is. If the fallacies look his wager, obviously there's no bright line for exactly how much education we get, but we can definitely tell things like fixed are educational. You say it's self-defeating. This presupposes competing interprets and a warrant for reasonability. You say it's self-defeating because otherwise we'd read theory on people who could be more educational, but that proves reasonability. Competing interps will conclude that we'd have to read theory on people to be more educational, but reasonability would say we'd read the we wouldn't read, we'd have to read that theory. The D point is just your C point is just read a book. That's false. Even if those things are educational, it doesn't mean debate can also be educational, particularly in the competitive activity that has a research incentives. Your last argument was something silly. You said education is bastardized in debate. That's obviously not the case. Even if it's a little bastardized, it's probably still key because everyone in this room has probably learned a lot from debate. The predictions page. Our scenario is definitely good. Absent a 1 error explanation for why why there are structural problems with it. A general theory about IR is the same thing that their card indites. Their card indites making universal prescriptions about international relations, but then their card makes a universal prescription about international relations that says that we can't predict them, which means you should err to the specificity of the negative scenario. Independently, this is not how impacts work. The reason they're impacted out to bioterror and things like that is because those are the risks that those things have happened, which proves why terrorism is important. When people debate in Congress, they don't have to read a bioterror extinction impact to the fact that the affirmative would like cause terrorism or something like that, because they all know that the impact is large and we would try to prevent it, especially if the pick solves all the case. Now, the pick solving case should also be a framing argument on this predictions page, which means you have to do specific work in the 1 error. The advantage. Equal protection / disparate impact relies on proving intent to discriminate. It also enforces its solvency based on individual tough-to-prove suits granted all 17 to succeed. On a claim, defendant must know that the action was motivated by discriminatory purpose or found that evidence showed the discriminatory impact would not show that individuals to discriminatory purpose and therefore did not violate the equal protection clause. Later cases affirmed from the intent standard clause and act could have expressed government. The intent would place a heavy burden on plaintiffs who are alleging discrimination and violation of the equal protection clause when it's possible to detect sort of and quantify the motives of the legislator. The emergent implicit by raises difficult questions about the intent standard. U.S. Supreme Court purchased never had these systems of implicit by and express concern that the equal protection clause may not effectively regulated. Their evidence also goes negative. I've inserted a highlighting. It says that disparate treatment has not come close to eliminating discrimination. It agrees with the negative that their solvency relies on the fact that individual people would have to sue. Now, all their budgets argument, they don't have a warrant that says states would decrease business industrial complex if they lost their budgets. In fact, they've cut health programs. Friedman 9, the mismatch of needs and revenues on the state and local level threatens service everything genders the need for investment in health and local planning will chase the economy down the hill of the economic recession or worse political failure leaves social services on the chopping block is estimated by state balancers to about spending standing with the shrinking revenues, and their spending internal link ramps up criminalization. It turns the case Ferguson proves Vibes 14, the city is governed is facing a massive budget crisis with the hoping to solve by ordering your police officer or ticket already strained the high tension. The police would have tried millions of tickets for small non-violent infractions that contribute further on risk increasing on such crimes when it's the wrong way to go. And plea bargaining is key to effective defenders. It turns the case guru to Z98 public defenders have the same problem in allocating serious with the effectiveness. We shall have public defenders get more time now for the many states most gaps on the amount of money located in additional crime. The plea bargaining powers of hard way to compromise attorney adequately represent her line and still make a living. All works so for me.
Sure.
Oh wow, is this what my verbatim formatting looks like on?
Yeah.
That's nasty. I mean, I didn't read this like a card.
Yeah, you inserted it.
No, I just like coded some lines from it. Just like notes for me. Yeah, this one.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Sure. Status. Oh, you had it. What's defense?
An argument that that is not a active reason to vote for you. Like
So if I make an argument like the pick doesn't solve case, can you kick the pick?
I guess yeah.
Okay. You say plea deals are key to antitrust division success. Why is antitrust division key to stopping cartels?
The evidence cites multiple scenarios where they have stopped cartels and corporate corruption. It's
Sure,
not the,
sure,
it's not
so
the, like it's not a typical cartel scenario, like, but it's more about like sort of cartel leaders in the on the international scene.
So
Plea
explain to me
agreements
how
are key to-
plea bargains like.
Yeah, there are
stop
two
cartels.
internal links. The first one is an informants. Plea deals allow.
Informants?
Yeah, plea deals
What's
allow.
the second one?
The second one is that plea agreements, since a lot of these cases are sort of outside U.S. jurisdiction, what the United States does is it incentivizes lower members of the ranks to come to the criminal justice system because of plea agreements, so they won't be punished as much.
Okay,
and
so
then
both
uses
of them
the-
is getting like lower members to get informants.
Sure.
Cool. The court pack and decide. This card. Sure. The court pack and decide. How does it get past a filibuster?
Who would filibuster? Like,
Democrats?
what evidence? Like, how many do you think they need for a filibuster?
8.
Wait, what? I'm confused.
Yeah. How does a court packing bill in the Senate get past a Democratic filibuster?
I am not aware.
You have no internal link for how it gets past a filibuster?
No, it's not an argument that was relevant until the
Wait.
lawyer makes it.
Okay. Sounds good. This card about disparate impact says like in the status quo, it requires intent. Why does the precedent?
Your
we saw-
Cruz evidence.
I didn't read the cruise evidence.
Well, then you just like don't have the card that says like your plaintext says that it creates a substantive disparate racial impact.
Yes.
My argument is that
This card says the court found evidence showed a discriminatory impact but did not show intent.
Yeah,
What-
that means you have to prove
precedent
intent underneath the way the
no,
plan works.
that's how it is under the status quo. The point is we change precedent. Why does our precedent?
How do you change
mean-
precedent? Where do you articulate that? No, you have
Context.
no. You said that you should rule plea bargaining unconstitutional based on the fact that it creates a substantially
Yes.
disparate racial impact.
Yes,
I read
so-
a card saying what that means.
No, okay.
Like what it means for something to create that disparate
Okay.
impact. Your plain text does not say you
say
change what it means to be a
increase-
disparate
You
impact.
say increase budgets, decimate social services. What's the internal link to increase spending?
No, it says that they'll cut like social services
Why?
because they need money to sustain the prison
Where,
industrial
does this,
complex.
where do any of these cards talk about prison industrial complex?
Your AF made a claim that
So
you
it's
will-
only the evidence in the app.
Yes, your
Cool.
AF made a claim that it requires a large amount of money. My argument is that they'll, in the face of that requirement, they will not curb back the prison industrial complex.
Sounds
They will
good.
cut other services.
Is there a fairness not a voter argument in the PICS card?
Yes.
What's that argument?
Well, it's not a voter. It doesn't ever matter, but it's just like a weighing argument.
What's
it says
a
that the
weighing?
obsession with it says that you can just like get better to deal with fairness claims that are just like now
Okay.
the debate is hard
Sure.
and it's like specific to the pick, so it seems like it matters.
The internal link to packing is like a new court packing bill, right?
Yeah, it gives
Yeah.
it gives a justification for the government to just like fill all of the spots the app creates. Your evidence yourself says that you need like hundreds of new judges.
Yeah.
The government would happily provide.
Wait. Okay.
So even in that circumstance, the Democrats wouldn't be able to stop it because they
Why not?
Because you have created a need for like hundreds of new judges.
So the
government
Democrats
has
are just
to-
like, yeah, let's like make the judiciary Republican for a decade.
Well, they wouldn't say something around the lines of let's leave 400 vacant spots.
Why would they create vacant spots in the
Your
first
app
place?
creates vacant spots. It's in
No,
line with
but-
your evidence.
I disagree, and I cut that. This said evidence.
No, like your evidence in the app, not the DA. The link is reliant on the app solvency.
Yeah.
Or the app sort of like crash stuff. Here it is. I'm pointing an army of judges right there.
Yeah.
Behind our card.
Sorry, how do cartels help terrorism?
Let me find the original of this. It says that A, they like engage in attacks and like violence themselves, and B, it is they're great for transportation of weapons.
What was your answer to
particularly-
Karnofsky?
The predictions, the sort of
Yeah.
what is it? The good things now outweighs bad things later.
Yeah.
The sort of prediction of the negative is that these things are empirically proven, thus they are also a good thing now.
Did you make a reject one or theory argument on reasons?
Oh, no, I forgot to tell you the hedge I read.
Yeah.
I just read the arguments about how it struck the argument and reasonability stuff. I did not say one error theory was all bad.
Okay.
Here.
What's persuasive defense?
Whatever the judges think it is.
Okay. What's your argument on structural unfairness?
I make the debate tough for you, or like you have to like win the app versus a couple arguments. It's not the same thing as like I have like stolen your laptop or like etc. There is like we can generally tell when things are structurally unfair or that at least.
Okay, 50 seconds. I accidentally put all the new stuff on your doc instead of mine, so.
You just send the doc out and send my doc out.
Yeah, it's at the top of TOC quarters one.
Okay. Can you name it? Can you put like a 2 at the end of the title or something?
I'll name it TOC quarters 1
Ah.
A.
Thank you.
Thanks. It's gonna be one new off. The theory stuff. The Wayne stuff.
What is the lame stuff?
Like the Karnofsky evidence, the
Oh, the predictions.
mag predictions. Then
Wait, are you reading this first new off? Because I would.
wait.
Oh no, never mind. That is not the doc.
Yeah,
that is a
that's
doc.
the
Another
Rashad
doc I had.
stuff.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I was so confused. I just like saw it.
Yeah, I just never know.
TOC quarters 1 error. No, it was like must specify when the test case happens. I was like, what?
Sorry, order is the.
Condo.
Theory.
Theory, weighing, case, packing, dissent.
Theory what?
The theory, hedge stuff.
Theory, the theory underview, and then
Case, then packing.
I have predictions and need advantage on different sheets.
Do you have predictions above advantage?
Okay. Theory, hedge, predictions, advantage, packing, personal.
Yeah.
Is there like a large new chunk of theory argument that I should
Yeah.
put on some case?
Yeah.
In addition to the new thing?
No.
I think it, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's just a new show.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, when you say
Oh,
theory, I
okay.
thought you meant theory.
Interpretation of net claims to solve case and egg may only kick the apathy if the affirmative reads affirm to clarify. You can't kick from make solving C deficits, violations, and CXs. It's just kind of disguise. They can make absurd claims like CP solves case or all of reason. Only wait for the one error to stick them to an apathy to concede this with guarantees loss on force to make a solvency deficit. That this one error could have to be compared to working on two apathy with different unique conditions. Often that limits my ability to clap, which forces the one error away from more in-depth offensive responses. So quick, permanent extension K frames also it's my ability to start in-depth having a comparison to one error uniquely. Back to 6 minutes to 2 in our collapse is devastating. They get new cards to make a response to one error turns their theory head stuff. Extend drop the debater, they can't go for the drop the argument. That's functionally condo. Either you stick it with them, in which case they'll just go for it and there's no impact to the shell, or they kick out of it, which is a condo argument. Reasonability will concede it, but it's persuasive defense should mean that there's almost a 0 chance risk of offense. Insofar as we're winning it, then you can vote on it. The RPI arguments, they say they get it if they read more than one off. We're not going to do that. Structural unfairness, you answered it wrong. The argument isn't just condo is structural unfairness. You conceded it's luxury prior because insofar as you have more routes to ballot, then we have to leverage against 2 worlds in the 1 hour, which makes it harder to answer. The fairness, not a voter stuff hidden in it. This is just like you should get better debate. Insofar as our ability to do better debate is skewed. Insofar as fairness is irrelevant, he's conceded that means vote affirmative even if he's winning it because that's unfair the case. The app creates a massive increase in the number of trials, which causes the government to be forced to divest from things like mass incarceration. They don't have any evidence that government could fund a 30 times increase in the amount of incarceration at the state and federal levels. It would require not only an increase in the number of judges, but courthouses, bailiffs, etc., none of which they can solve for it. So it also sets a precedent that allows for disparate impact, that allows for challenges to things like discriminatory housing, it allows for things like discriminatory housing, healthcare, etc. We want to risk that the pick is not able to solve that. He doesn't really have any answers. The first card he reads against it is talking about the status quo. This is what we criticize. Disparate impact means you no longer have to rely on it. And the second part where he re-highlighted it is literally citing the part of our card where it's talking about why the status quo is bad. There's a distinction between disparate impact and disparate treatment, which we talk about. You say decimate social services. This is misunderstanding of the higher evidence. The higher evidence says there's no reason they would reinvest in it or increase spending because there's no political support and budgets are shrinking. There's no reason like divest it from things people like, which means there's no impact. So the second card talks about criminalization. He hasn't read a spending internal link. You say it's key to effective defenders. You should view plea bargaining like a valve. We massively decrease the number of cases, which means if public defenders have more time to spend on cases, and even if it does make it slightly worse, the number of cases that go to trial are slightly worse. Packing. No uniqueness. Trump is back in the courts regardless. He on 1227 with the confirmation 12th Circuit Court Judge Trump had a record for judge and confirmed residence first year. Filibuster means they can't change that, and Trump can't trigger reconciliation. Super 17. Calories, they suggest reconciliation to avoid filibuster, Democrats reconciliation law, and because the tax increase, but other policy have to go through regular order. The 2018 resolution contains reconciliation only 2 committees, legislation, a new federal judgment follows in judiciary committees to today, participate in reconciliation, prohibits the purposes of established conservative control, incidental fiscal impact, but not suffice. Cartels debate. No, link and link turn. Informant deals aren't paid by the half and solve the impact that are not above 10. Informant deals are paid with that informant's authority to be able to penetrate crime syndicates, cartels, terrorist gang, and like an informant deal makes possible prosecution of high-level operatives. Informant you see also stabilizes, destabilizes, organized crime, informant censure, international efforts, Islamic terrorist groups, the secrecy, and enable government to avoid scrutiny, move quickly, converting a defendant can be easier than a plea. Unlike a plea bargain, informant deal is temporary and personal instead of litigating. Kill the informant deal prevents agreement will have even punishment open-ended. Sorry, the rest of the stuff I accidentally put on the original doc. I'll send it to you after this. Cartel violence increase in statistical analysis dated back multiple years in session new policy Irby 1-11. Pop revenue significant cash to correct and put more money in the hands of cartels would bring instability to Mexico due to power struggle created by extradition. El Chapo recent years have been among the bloodiest deaths. Started rising in 2015. That half should outweigh even if he wins a risk of bioterror. The predictions evidence indicates it's extremely hard to predict things like terrorism, even if it's possible, and he does want a risk of a link. The half should outweigh because anything else causes policy paralysis. He doesn't have evidence that say their crucial or informant deals cancel the link insofar as it's been successful in the past. If we will there's a trade-off, and informant deals have also been successful in the past and trade-offs, and that's the reason we outweigh the cartel system.
Okay, cool. Can you send the new card out?
Yeah. Can you just give me your doc?
Oh, yeah, sorry. There's a flash drive not in your chain. That is unfortunate. Oh, come on. I opened the doc without taking it out of the thing.
Sure.
So it's like yelling at me that it can't.
It's called TOC 1.
Alright, by the way, before I listen, where did you stop reading his theory shell?
And I don't have exactly where it's,
I think you stopped here.
yeah.
That's right, and then you did not.
Yeah.
This sounds good. Okay, we'll start prep time now. The argument for drop the debater that was extended was that dropping the argument, like dropping the counterpoint, is the same thing as conditionality, right?
It was a little more nuanced than that.
What was the next
But
part?
basically, either you get stuck with it, in which case you'll just go for it, which doesn't deter any abuse, or it goes away, which is condo. Either world is bad.
And the shell was just kind of bad, right? The abuse story?
Well, we make the argument that your dispositional, the status of the counterplan is the same thing as condo, which is like the first sentence after violation.
Yes, and then the abuse is like kind of bad.
Yeah, like your ability to kick out.
Okay, no, I'm just asking if I can make condo good arguments, because yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah, because like the dispo part, yeah, it's pretty much condo. Like I agree. like, you know. What was the last argument made on the theory underview page?
I think it, like you mean on the picks, the fairness bad
Yeah, the
stuff.
yeah, you were like answering fairness isn't an impact stuff.
Like, fairness has to be relevant because it's how the judges decide. Insofar as fairness is not relevant, then you should just vote F, even if you're winning it, because that's unfair.
Wait, one more time.
Fairness has to be relevant because that's how judges are able to make a fair and equitable decision. Insofar as fairness isn't irrelevant, then there's no reason you should just vote F regardless of the flow.
All right, cool. Okay. The order is the antitrust pick, the advantage, the theory under review, condo.
Advantage, you mean like the case?
Yeah.
One more time.
Antitrust pick, the advantage, theory under review, condo. Huh? What's wrong?
We're not in column, I suppose.
No. Well, I mean, yeah, it's kind of obvious.
There's no new doc, right?
No, unless you want like.
It's fine.
Okay, cool. All right. Two overview arguments on the counterpoint. The one, the only piece of one-year weighing was done in terms of the terrorist impact, but the conceded exploitation of violence impact out of the guerrilla. 14 evidence that the cartels caused that sort of exploitation while in 20% deaths happen a year, which means the counterpoint definitively resolves that impact, even if they win their prediction stuff. Also, the prediction stuff just was not explained in the 1 year, which means you should err heavily towards explanation, especially since they conceded all the specificity arguments. I will explain the scenario. The cartels create tunnels to the United States in which you can get weapons passed through. Bioterror is an existential risk as upon Hippo evidence, which means I'm definitely winning the impact analysis. This always the case because the counterpoint resolves the majority of the case offense, and all of their offense was just not explained in terms of an impact analysis. They just said predictions are bad, but that's not a weighing argument as to why the F impact out was the negative impact, which means that I definitely get impact analysis. Second is sufficiency framing. They did not articulate how much of plea bargaining they have to get rid of or how much disparate impact doctrine they have to extend in order to resolve any of their impacts, which means you should err negative if the counterpoint does enough of it, which it definitely does because it operates only at the antitrust level, but not the criminal level, which is where most of the criminal cases that the affirmative is talking about are resolved. Then it resolves the majority of the case. That should be sufficient to vote. The counterpoint plea deals are definitely key. They've conceded two pieces of great evidence talking about this. Reinhardt evidence says that they're key to bring in informants from jurisdictions that they're not part of the UCJS because they can promise them things like getting away with it. That also takes out their Napatov evidence because they say informant deals are only temporary, but we need plea deals because we have to ensure that people we're attracting from sort of the international order have a full chance to generally be free, so they can snitch or they can snitch on the higher ups. That takes out the Napatov argument. The Napatov argument specifically, the line from the argument says that converting a defendant is easier than negotiating a conventional plea. It's not saying that these aren't plea bargains. It's just saying they're not traditional plea bargains. They've conceded all of my evidence. The Reinhardt evidence says corporate antitrust defendants plead guilty. It's called C pleas. That's why Napatov is talking about traditional plea bargaining versus C plea bargaining. Also, the OECD 8 evidence is specifically talking about pleading guilty. We have so many more cards in them on this, which are heavily negative. The next card they read just says cartel violence is increasing. That's not what it says. It says that if we decided to prosecute people, prosecute pot above the border, then there would be more funding for cartels. But that doesn't mean cartel violence is generally increasing. My Reinhardt evidence cites statistical trends that these pleas are stopping cartels, and I have one an impact him to stopping cartels. Good. Now the counterpoint definitely solves the case. The Alpha-Always argument was already answered. The advantage. The only argument I have to answer here is the precedent solvency deficit that he made. This argument is also there's no permutation on the counterpoint, which means this Napatov evidence doesn't apply even if when they don't link because he didn't perm the counterpoint. The case. The only argument I have to answer here is this is precedent argument. They extend precedent, which is good, but the counterpoint also extends the same precedent, and they conceded a card that says there are no disparate impact in these antitrust plea agreements, which means it's not necessary to extend the precedent. There is a sufficiency framing argument also resolves this. We use the same precedent to you, which outweighs the theory interview. You should drop the argument. Stick us with the counterpoint. It says that it says it won't deter abuse, but deterrence is false. Nothing deters abuse. No one loses on conditionality and reads no condo anywhere. They always keep reading conditionality no matter what, which means deterrence is terminally non-unique, and it cannot be the only warrant for drop the argument. You conceded my warrant for drop the argument, which is that it minimizes intervention, which means if you drop the argument, you stick the negative with the counterpoint. That also means every solvency deficit to the counterpoint makes since it applies. That rectifies all abuse that the 1A articulates. All abuse that the 1A articulates because every solvency deficit the counterpoint applies. You should not vote on risk of offense because they conceded reasonability. This is persuasive defense. The 1A the 2A can stick us with the counterpoint, which always all of their offense do, because the fact that drop the argument was conceded, and there was an independent warrant for it conceded, and the warrant in the 1AR, which was just that if the counterpoint stays and won't deter abuse, was very well answered. That deterrence is not a thing. You all know deterrence is not a thing, which means you should not vote on your extension of structural abuse. You say condo is structural abuse because it creates more layers. No, it's just like tier theory. It's just an argument that I can win on. You can have the world of the affirmative. You can always wait in the world of the counterpoint. Now, the theory into proper. Counter-interpretation, the negatives, one counterpoint that solves the case and can be kicked based on defense. I need to have the counterpoint overview. 1. All arguments are conditional. There's no way for teams to go for every possible argument saying the counterpoints of the 1 can be conditional. So arbitrary, no neutral arguments. Don't let them draw the distinction. 2. Counter-interpret solves your offense because I have to pick an advocacy by the end of the debate. It's like the last speech. They can fully develop arguments against one advocacy. 3. Multiple terms check. You use from just as many conditional advocacy terms or even worse than they introduce to conditional words. It prevents us from getting crystallized impact calculates the way terms are derived from the event. 4. The skill is uniquely problematic. The 1EC is designed to criticize it so you can generate a dissent on the CP. You can find the scope. 5. Real-world education policymakers will attack or propose using conditional
congressional advocacies from multiple angles. You have to defend you have to from the right and left teaching. You defend the nuances. You affirm a strong listening to education. Because of purpose of the role which teaches the strong skills. The fifth, the sixth is strategic thinking. Two kind of first, the 1 year to make its best arguments first, and stick to the I keep them. This makes the 1 year have to meet a certain mark for excellence that incentivizes them to get faster and do better research, which is a fairness impact. I made the debate hard is not structural abuse, and you should not vote on it. This is quarters of the TOC, and if you're voting on Kondo, then I'll remember how to prep you the rest of my career. This is absurd. Now, the overview to their arguments, the fairness overview. 1, the counter-interpretation time skew. If I limit the 1 and C to 1 advocacy and force the choice in the 2 are, so the minimal time skew, none of the 2 are. That means the links are so small that any other impact device 2 turn the F gets the plan affirm to do both option. The negro simply gets the counterpoint status quo, neither do option. Keto response strong listening to friend. Third counter solves all of their offense that was explained above. Fourth turn the F gets infinite affirms, which is also solved above. 5 they get offense only at 1 advocacy. The fairness is so small that any other degree of unfairness, like one of us talking faster, outweighs it anyway, which was all the impact calc done above. 6 this is no different from tier theory. There's a conditional, just have to prove the after-order interpretation is better. 7 the impact turn time strategy pressure or good. They foster quick thinking, efficiency, strategic thinking, and learning how arguments interact with Apple, whatever you love. Link turns to terminal impact since the Apple learns to be strategic and activate through 1 and C strategies with conditional advocacy. The next argument is that don't evaluate the minor imbalances conditionality causes if you want to play a fair game, play Monopoly or football. You say Netflix the next argument is that Netflix outweighs 1 year time allocation. They have infinite prep time to rigorously test their affirmative and do extensive research. We found a portion that of the affirmative that was not disparate impact, which is a card they conceded. I have thoroughly responded to their Kondo argument, which is the only out because they just like messed up on the cartels page. They're just like, they have this internal link to education because they can't do in-depth advocacy comparison. No, if you were fast, you can do in-depth advocacy comparison. We access more depth than you because you have to do in-depth advocacy comparison on multiple sides, like comparing it to the court packing dissent and comparing it to the PIC. You should also evaluate in-round abuse only. You have no jurisdiction over what can happen in future rounds of conditionality. In this debate, I found a PIC about something that didn't have disparate impact, to concede way too many cards on the PIC about it, and an external impact that didn't solve, and there's no permutation on the PIC, and you don't vote on Kondo because it is TOC quarterfinals. Can you point to me, sorry, in your dissent, is there any evidence that mentioning plea bargains other than Reiner?
The OECD evidence.
Where's that?
That one says C please, and this one talks about
Yeah. Sure. And where does this talk about all the reasons you say informant deals can't solve, i.e. bringing people from overseas?
This card says here that they don't inhabit, which means we have to guarantee them. We have to secure the fine proposed. They will not come forward otherwise. And if this card is extremely qualified, and obviously in the context of plea deals.
And there's no argument like for an RVR on Kondo, right?
No.
Cool. Cartels. Or the antitrust pick, whatever you want to call it. Ready? Here's a problem. Sorry, I made my timer wrong. 3 hours, not 3 minutes. Okay. I'm going for the link turns on the cartel says here's the problem. Ishan makes a lot of blustery statements about why informant deals cannot solve for why his evidence about why plea bargains are crucial. Here's the problem. I've read through his evidence about 3 times through the entire debate. None of it makes any of the claims he talks about. This should be a round based on evidence or Nadapuff evidence, which was labeled as the link turn in the 1 AR is the only piece of evidence which talks about informant deals in the context of plea bargains and their ability to solve back for terrorist groups. His Reinhardt evidence that he reads on the dissent says the antitrust division is key to have corporate plea deals. Then later in the card, it's talking about how the antitrust division solves back for cartels. But the problem is there's no reason why plea negotiations are key or why informant deals aren't able to solve back for any of his evidence or for why it's key. You should call for both the Nadapuff and Reinhardt evidence in this round. I will state the round of the Nadapuff evidence being better than his, especially in the context of the plea deal evidence, Nadapuff evidence. The Nadapuff evidence makes a specific claim. First is that there are 2 ways of gaining informants from overseas and within the domestic realm. You can use a plea bargain or an informant deal. They trade off because you can only use one of them. Informant deals are successful in combating international terrorist gangs. That's literally a direct quote from the Nadapuff evidence. You shouldn't let him get away with blustery analytics that are backed up by any of his evidence when only ours makes an empirical claim on the ability of informant deals to solve. Those are not better because they give leniency insofar as informants are not successful or lie. The government is able to crack down on on them. It doesn't have any problems with incentives insofar as people are looking to negotiate anything. All of these claims are supported by our Natikoff evidence, and he makes a bunch of blustery statements for why they don't solve. His argument is that this is just about conventional plea bargains. I'll tell you again, I'll stake the round on this evidence. It says, unlike a plea bargain, it's distinct because there aren't set in stone penalties. In a plea bargain, they agree to plead guilty to certain sentences, but under an informant deal, the sentence is contingent on the final part of it. Yeah, those are his arguments against it. I'll do some weighing here. You should decide the round based on evidence quality. His OECD evidence is just about how plea deals don't link to disparate impact cases, which means the only piece of evidence he has is the Reiner evidence. If you think this evidence has anything close to what it was described as in the 2NR, then you shouldn't vote on it. He makes, I'll answer a few other arguments. First, he says it's key to getting people from overseas. There's no warrant for why plea deals are specifically able to get terrorists from overseas. The evidence doesn't say that. It's in the context of the second part of the card where it talks about how they're key to solving international cartel. Yeah, it talks about how, like, the antitrust division is key to getting cartels. It just says we have an enforcement game that tries to get people from overseas. That part of the evidence is not about plea bargains. That's the first half of the case where it talks about C pleas, which are not only distinct because there were corporations take, but not individual informants. But it's also not a reason that's not solved. He conceded a Wayne argument from the one era that just because plea bargains are successful in the status quo, that is just because plea bargains are successful in the status quo, that is not a reason. That is not a reason that informant deals are better. Insofar as it's a trade-off, and Natikoff evidence has an absence of plea deals means people move on to informant deals. If those are more successful, then that's the reason you can vote on only turn it to the dissent, because it's better able to solve back for all of his arguments.
Is it?
I assume you want those.
Obviously, didn't need the last try at this point.